The sky was painted in shades of orange and violet, the last light of the setting sun glinting off the jagged peaks of the Dragonlands. Dragon Girl ran along the ridge, her small but agile legs carrying her faster than any human could manage. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest, each beat echoing the fear that had settled deep in her bones. Below, in the valley, her mother, the great and majestic Dragon Mother, was struggling. Her scales, usually a brilliant mix of emerald and gold, were streaked with dark wounds, and smoke rose from her nostrils in short, frightened puffs. Dragon Girl could see the enemy now, shadowy figures that moved with terrifying precision, circling her mother like wolves around a wounded deer. She had never felt such fear. She had never imagined anyone could harm her mother. And yet, here they were. Tears blurred Dragon Girl's vision as she ran, her small wings flapping in panic, though they could not lift her fully into the air yet. She could hear her mother's low, resonant roar, pain and warning mixed together, but it was no match for the force attacking her. Her claws dug into the rocky earth, leaving tiny scratches that glowed faintly in the dim light. She had to get help. She had to do something. Her mind was spinning, frantic with fear and anger, but she remembered the humans. They were nearby, strange creatures who often watched her from a distance, pilots of great ships that could move across the skies faster than she could imagine. Normally, she did not trust them, but now, there was no one else. With a desperate cry, she screamed their names as she reached the edge of the ridge. The humans were just as startled as she had hoped they would be. In their sleek silver suits, standing beside their hovering ships, they turned to see her running toward them, her face wet with tears, her small frame shaking with urgency. For a moment, they froze, unsure what to do. One of them, a tall figure with a helmet reflecting the twilight sky, reached out a hand as if to stop her, but the confusion in their movements only fueled Dragon Girl's panic. She could barely form words through her sobs, shouting, "Stop! They're hurting my mother. Please, help her." The humans looked at each other, hesitating, their expressions hidden behind the reflective visors. Dragon Girl had expected fear or hesitation, but what she saw in that pause was more shocking. A distant calculation, as if they were deciding whether her mother's pain was worth their intervention. She had no time to think. She darted forward, waving her tiny arms and letting out a scream that cracked the silence of the evening. Behind her, the enemy struck again, a sharp flash of energy hitting the Dragon Mother's side, and the great beast let out a roar so loud it shook the stones beneath Dragon Girl's feet. Smoke and dust filled the air, stinging her eyes and making her cough, but she refused to stop. She had never felt so powerless in her life. Every instinct told her to fight, to protect her mother, but she was still too small, too weak. The humans might be her only chance. The enemy figures, tall, armored shapes with glowing weapons, moved with inhuman speed, circling her mother and striking relentlessly. Dragon Girl could see claws piercing the Dragon Mother's scales, energy weapons leaving glowing marks that sizzled on her hide. She wanted to fly up and smash them all, but the weight of her fear pinned her to the ground. "Please!" she shouted, her voice breaking. "Do something. Help her." Her tears fell freely now, streaking her face as the humans finally moved, but not in the way she expected. Instead of rushing forward to attack, they hesitated, forming a line between her and the distant battle, their weapons raised in a defensive posture. Dragon Girl's heart sank. Were they afraid? Or were they waiting for something else? She had always heard stories about humans, the way they could be clever, unpredictable, even heroic, but right now, that knowledge brought her little comfort. All she could see was her mother, trembling and wounded, and the enemy closing in, ready to strike again. Her wings fluttered helplessly, a gesture of frustration and fear, and she screamed once more, louder than ever before. The humans flinched, their arms moving as if pulled by some unseen command, and a strange hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to come from their ships. Dragon Girl's ears rang with the sound, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. Then, something happened. The enemy halted mid-attack, as if sensing a new force. Dragon Girl squinted, and through the smoke, she saw the humans' weapons glow with energy unlike anything she had ever seen. Light arced across the valley in precise, controlled bursts, not hitting her mother but creating a barrier between her and the attackers. Dragon Girl blinked, confused and hopeful at the same time. Were they helping her? Was this their way of fighting back? She could not understand fully, but the effect was immediate. The enemy froze, hissing in frustration and retreating slightly as the humans advanced carefully, maintaining the protective line around her. Dragon Girl's chest heaved as she watched, unsure whether to trust what she was seeing. The humans were not rushing to attack. They were calculating, waiting, observing, but their presence alone gave her mother a moment of respite. The Dragon Mother let out a low, painful growl, turning her massive head to look at Dragon Girl. There was recognition in her eyes, a silent message. "You came, little one. You did not leave me alone." Dragon Girl ran toward her mother, stopping just short of her clawed legs, trembling, and brushing her mother's wounded side with a shaking hand. The Dragon Mother let out a soft, almost imperceptible roar of comfort, and for a heartbeat, Dragon Girl felt hope. But hope was fragile, and danger was not finished. The enemy was regrouping, their weapons charging with renewed energy. Dragon Girl's hope wavered, replaced again by fear, but she noticed something strange. The humans were doing something she had never expected. Instead of attacking head-on, they began moving in patterns, hovering above the ground, their weapons emitting lines of glowing energy that formed shapes she could not comprehend. The air hummed with tension, the smell of ozone and smoke mingling in a way that made her stomach twist. She did not understand what they were doing, and that uncertainty made her heart pound faster. Then, a sudden blast of energy erupted from one of the human ships, not directly at the enemy but at the ground nearby. The earth shook, and a wave of force knocked the enemy off balance. Dragon Girl shielded her eyes from the dust and debris, and when she looked again, she realized the humans were her only hope, but how they would help her mother, she could not yet see. It was clever. It was strange. It was terrifying. She could only watch, frozen, as her mother slowly tried to rise, weakened but still defiant. The humans moved again, their glowing weapons pulsing rhythmically, creating a barrier that forced the enemy to retreat further. Dragon Girl wanted to shout, to ask them to hurry, but her voice was lost in the roar of battle. The cliffhanger came without warning. Just as Dragon Girl thought her mother might finally be safe, the humans did something entirely unexpected. One of them, a figure she had assumed to be calm and distant, stepped forward in the glow of the twilight. Without a word, they pressed a small device against their wrist, and suddenly, a massive wave of energy shot outward, not at the enemy, but toward Dragon Girl herself. She stumbled backward, terrified and confused, shielding her face. The light faded, and when she dared to look again, the humans were gone, vanished from the ridge, leaving her to stare at the Dragon Mother and the retreating enemies. Her heart pounded in confusion and fear. Had they saved them, or had they done something else entirely? Dragon Girl's wings twitched nervously as she approached her mother. Are they gone?" she whispered. The Dragon Mother shook her massive head slowly, pain and exhaustion evident in her golden eyes. She lowered her head to Dragon Girl's level, nudging her gently. "Stay close, little one," she rumbled softly. "We are not yet safe." The valley was quiet now, but the air still carried the echoes of energy blasts and roars. The humans' strange intervention had bought them time, but for what? Dragon Girl had no answer, only a growing sense of suspense and fear. Something had changed. Something big was coming. And with that, the first chapter of their ordeal ended, not with victory, not with safety, but with questions, fear, and the unmistakable feeling that the humans' actions were only the beginning of something far more dangerous than Dragon Girl could imagine. The valley lay quiet for a moment, almost deceptively peaceful. Smoke curled from the scorched ground where the humans' strange energy had erupted, and Dragon Girl clutched her mother's side, feeling the warmth of her wounded scales under her small hands. The Dragon Mother's breaths were shallow and ragged, her body trembling from the attack and exhaustion. Dragon Girl's mind raced, thinking of the humans, their sudden disappearance, their strange device, and the overwhelming power they had shown. She could not understand why they had acted that way. Why had they not directly attacked the enemy? Why had their energy blast nearly hit her? Confusion gnawed at her fear, but there was no time to dwell on it. She had to keep her mother safe, and she had to understand what the human's next move would be. From the ridge above, a shadow passed. Dragon Girl looked up sharply, her golden eyes wide with alarm. A single human pilot reappeared, descending carefully toward them with a mechanical grace she had never seen before. Their weapon hummed faintly, casting a soft glow on the rocks as they moved. Dragon Girl froze, unsure if she should trust this figure. Her instincts screamed caution, but the sight of her mother's battered form left her no choice. "Are you helping us?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human did not answer. Instead, they crouched slightly, as if studying her and her mother at the same time, their movements precise and deliberate. Dragon Girl's heart pounded. Every instinct told her to step back, but every heartbeat also told her that she had no other hope. Suddenly, the enemy returned, their silhouettes now sharper against the fading light. They had regrouped, circling higher in the sky, and Dragon Girl could see the malicious gleam of their weapons. Panic surged through her, and she turned toward the human pilot, pleading again. "Please, do something. Protect us." The pilot raised a hand, not to strike but in a gesture that made Dragon Girl hesitate. Then, without warning, they pressed a small button on their suit, and the valley trembled once more. This time, the energy did not just flare. It formed a strange, glowing cage around Dragon Girl and her mother. It hummed with power, impenetrable yet invisible, and the enemy struck against it in vain. Sparks flew where their weapons hit the barrier, and the attackers hissed, retreating slightly as if they were afraid of some force they could not see. Dragon Girl's mouth dropped open. She had expected humans to fight directly, to throw themselves into battle with strength and courage. She had not expected this. The humans were not rushing in. They were creating something she could not understand, something strange and terrifying. She glanced at her mother, whose eyes were wide with pain but also a flicker of recognition. "Do not fear," the dragon mother rumbled softly. "They are not attacking. Watch carefully. There is more here than you know." Dragon Girl could feel her mother's warmth under her hands, but the strange glow of the human's energy made her shiver. Minutes stretched painfully as the enemy tried again, striking the invisible shield with precision and fury. The human's hands moved rapidly, pressing more buttons and adjusting strange devices on their suits. Every movement was calculated, mechanical, almost robotic, yet Dragon Girl sensed intelligence behind it, tactical thinking that was far beyond her comprehension. She wanted to understand, to join in somehow, but her wings twitched nervously. She was a child in the middle of forces far greater than herself. She could only watch as the humans slowly began to take control of the situation, shifting the flow of battle without ever touching the attackers directly. Then something unexpected happened. One of the enemy figures, braver or perhaps more foolish than the others, lunged toward Dragon Girl's mother, hoping to bypass the barrier. Dragon Girl's heart froze. She wanted to scream, to leap forward, but before she could move, the humans acted again. A beam of concentrated energy shot from one of their suits, striking the attacker with incredible precision. The enemy screeched, thrown backward as if struck by an invisible force. Dragon Girl's eyes widened in awe. They were fighting, but not in a way she had ever imagined. There was no chaos, no reckless aggression, just careful, deadly control. Dragon Girl could feel a mix of hope and confusion stirring inside her. She had always thought humans were unpredictable, reckless, sometimes cruel, but this was something else entirely. It was as if they were thinking 10 steps ahead, controlling the battle like conductors of a symphony. Her mother's breathing steadied slightly, and she could feel the weight of her claws resting on the rocky ground, trying to regain balance. Dragon Girl took a small step forward, instinctively trying to help her mother rise. The dragon mother lowered her massive head, nuzzling Dragon Girl gently. "We are alive for now," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Watch them closely, little one. These humans, they are not as simple as you think." The battle continued, each second more tense than the last. Dragon Girl could hear the hiss of energy, the crackle of weapons, and the growls of her mother as she tried to regain strength. The humans moved like shadows, their every action deliberate, their strategy unfolding in real time. Dragon Girl could not follow all of it, but she could see the pattern forming. The humans were her shield, her protection, but in a way that she could not fully understand. Suspense twisted in her chest. Were they truly allies? Or was there something else at play? Something that might turn on her and her mother at any moment? Then the unexpected happened again. One human separated from the others, moving closer to Dragon Girl with a strange device in hand. Her heart skipped a beat. What are you doing?" she cried. The human stopped a few feet away, kneeling slightly, and pointed the device at the ground near her mother's claws. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly, the rocky ground shifted, forming a protective ridge around them. Dragon Girl could barely believe her eyes. The humans were not just defending. They were reshaping the battlefield itself. Energy lines formed walls and barriers that kept the enemy at bay, creating pockets of safety where Dragon Girl and her mother could breathe. Yet, with every action the humans took, Dragon Girl felt unease growing. Their movements were precise but impersonal, calculated as if they did not care about her or her mother beyond their tactical advantage. Suspense gripped her heart like a vice. Could she trust these humans? Were they saving her mother because they cared, or because it served a purpose she could not understand? She glanced at her mother, who was now leaning weakly on her forelimbs, eyes half closed in exhaustion. "We must trust them," her mother murmured softly. "For now, we have no other choice." Just when Dragon Girl thought the human strategy was complete, the enemy regrouped for a final push. This time, they moved in perfect synchronization, their weapons aimed with lethal intent. Dragon Girl's eyes widened. The humans responded immediately, their energy barriers glowing brighter, pulses of light striking toward the attackers in rhythmic precision. Sparks flew, rocks shattered, and the ground trembled beneath the clash. The humans' moves were deliberate but fast, almost impossible for Dragon Girl to follow. Each strike was met with a counterstrike, each advance blocked with uncanny skill. It was a dance of destruction, and Dragon Girl could only watch in stunned awe. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, Dragon Girl realized something important. These humans, for all their strangeness and unpredictability, were fighting with a purpose that even she could not fully understand. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also powerful allies. Her heart surged with a fragile hope, but suspense lingered. There was still danger, still the unknown. And in the back of her mind, a single question burned. What would the humans do next? And would it save her mother, or lead them into even greater peril? The valley was no longer quiet. Shadows stretched across the jagged rocks as night crept over the land, but the sense of calm was an illusion. Dragon Girl's heart raced as she looked at her mother, who struggled to rise, every movement heavy with pain. The humans had intervened, their strange devices and glowing energy saving them for now, but Dragon Girl could sense the enemy regrouping. They had not left. They had vanished only to return stronger, smarter, more determined. She knew the chase was far from over. Her mother's breaths came in heavy, shallow bursts, and Dragon Girl felt a surge of helplessness. She could not let them be caught again. Not like this. Not when her mother was wounded. Her wings trembled as she helped her mother to her feet. They moved slowly, cautiously, toward a narrow canyon that might provide some cover. Every step was dangerous. The rocks beneath them were jagged, and the shadows of approaching enemies loomed like dark, hungry predators. Dragon Girl's small hands clutched her mother's scales, feeling the heat and tremor of the great beast's body beneath her fingers. "We have to keep moving," she whispered, though her voice shook. Her mother nodded weakly, understanding the urgency. Even wounded, she knew the value of speed. Every second counted. Above them, the humans hovered in their sleek ships, scanning the horizon with glowing instruments. Dragon Girl noticed how their movements were deliberate yet unpredictable, sometimes moving closer, sometimes retreating to observe. They had become strange protectors, powerful and detached at the same time. She wondered what they were thinking. Were they truly on their side, or were they waiting for something she could not understand? Her mind spun with fear and uncertainty, but she had no time to ponder. The enemy was returning, and she had to act. A sudden shriek shattered the night. From the canyon's edge, the first wave of attackers appeared, moving with terrifying speed. Their weapons glowed with the same deadly energy as before, but now their movements were coordinated, almost cunning. Dragon Girl felt her heart hammer against her chest. She wanted to roar, to fight, but she was too small, too weak. Her mother, despite the injuries, let out a defiant growl and spread her massive wings in a half-hearted attempt to intimidate the attackers. Sparks flew as claws and weapons clashed with the rocky terrain. The humans acted again, but this time differently. Instead of a protective barrier, they fired lines of energy that cut through the path ahead, clearing obstacles and creating a narrow route for Dragon Girl and her mother to escape. Dragon Girl's eyes widened in shock. She had expected the humans to fight directly, yet they moved with strategic brilliance, shaping the battlefield without fully revealing themselves. She clutched her mother tighter and whispered, "We have to follow their lead." Her mother gave a faint nod, though exhaustion was visible in every movement. They moved carefully, one step at a time, through the canyon, but the attackers were relentless. Every curve, every shadow, brought the threat closer. Dragon Girl felt a mix of fear and awe. The humans were saving them, yes, but their methods were unpredictable, and every action left a lingering tension. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the canyon floor. Dragon Girl fell to her knees, shielding her face from flying debris. When the dust cleared, she saw one human pilot standing in the center of a burst of energy, calm and controlled, as the attackers recoiled. Another human appeared beside them, sending a focus beam toward a rocky outcrop, triggering a small landslide that blocked part of the enemy's path. Dragon Girl's mouth dropped open. They were not only defending, they were directing the battle, shaping it like an artist controlling a storm. Her mother leaned heavily on her, the weight of her massive body pressing down on Dragon Girl's small frame. "Keep moving, little one," she rumbled. "They are guiding us, but we must act. Follow carefully, or we will be trapped." Dragon Girl nodded, pushing aside fear, and helped her mother step over rocks and debris, weaving through the narrow passages of the canyon. Sparks from the humans' energy strikes illuminated the walls, casting flickering shadows that made the attackers seem like monstrous specters. Every second was a battle of nerves. Every step carried the risk of sudden attack. The chase intensified as the enemy adapted. They split into two groups, flanking Dragon Girl and her mother from opposite sides. Dragon Girl's pulse raced. She could feel the heat of her mother's exhausted body and the tension in her own wings. The humans acted swiftly, sending beams of energy to cut off one flank while drawing the other into a trap. Dragon Girl could hardly comprehend the precision, yet she felt the rhythm of the humans' moves, like a pulse she had to follow to survive. Every instinct screamed caution, yet she pressed forward, step by trembling step. Suddenly, a shadow leapt from above. Dragon Girl cried out in alarm as one of the attackers aimed directly at her mother. The dragon mother stumbled, her injured wing dragging against the ground. Dragon Girl's heart seized. She wanted to roar, to strike, but before she could move, a beam of light shot past her, striking the attacker with surgical precision. The force sent the enemy flying backward, skidding along the canyon floor. Dragon Girl blinked, stunned. The humans were intervening again, but not recklessly. Every strike was calculated, every move exact. For a moment, Dragon Girl felt a surge of hope. Perhaps they could escape after all. But the tension never left. Every shadow, every noise of shifting rocks, reminded her that danger was close, always close. She clutched her mother's claw, whispering words of encouragement, though her own fear threatened to overwhelm her. The humans continued to guide them, their glowing weapons and strange devices forming a path of safety through the canyon. But Dragon Girl could not shake the feeling that the humans' motives were a mystery she might never understand. Then, without warning, the enemy regrouped again, faster and more coordinated than before. Dragon Girl's stomach twisted with dread. She looked at her mother, who gave a low growl and spread her wings as best she could, ready to defend despite exhaustion. The humans acted immediately, their weapons pulsing with energy, firing lines and barriers that forced the attackers to retreat slightly. Dragon Girl felt her heart pound. She could see the human strategy now. They were not attacking directly, not charging into danger. They were controlling the battlefield, forcing the enemy into patterns they could manage. A sudden noise to her left made Dragon Girl spin. Another wave of attackers had slipped past the humans' defenses, moving like shadows in the canyon. Her pulse raced. She turned to see a human pilot moving at incredible speed, sliding along the rocky surface, and striking with precision that sent the attackers reeling. Dragon Girl's eyes widened. They were fast, calculated, deadly, and yet, they did not appear angry or cruel. They were like predators hunting with intelligence rather than rage. Her mother leaned heavily on her, whispering, "Watch, learn, little one. Humans are strange creatures. They fight differently than we do, but they fight for purpose." The chase continued into the night, the valley echoing with the clash of energy and the roar of dragons. Dragon Girl's muscles ached from fear and exhaustion, but she refused to stop. Her mother, despite wounds and fatigue, pressed forward, trusting the human's guidance. Dragon Girl followed, eyes darting between the glowing lines of energy and the approaching shadows. Every step brought new danger, new uncertainty, but also new awe at the human's power and strategy. The suspense was unbearable. One false move could mean death, yet the human's control kept them alive, a delicate balance on the edge of catastrophe. Finally, as the first light of dawn touched the canyon walls, the humans created a path that led them to a narrow cliffside ledge. The enemy had been forced to retreat for now, their movements cautious and hesitant. Dragon Girl fell to her knees, gasping for breath, holding her mother's scales tightly. Her wings drooped with fatigue. The humans hovered nearby, silent and calculating as ever, their glowing devices still humming faintly. Dragon Girl looked at them, a mixture of awe and fear in her eyes. She could not fully understand their ways, their motives, or their strange methods. But she knew one thing. They had saved them. Yet, as she helped her mother to rest, Dragon Girl felt a lingering dread. The enemy had not given up. They would return, smarter and more dangerous. And the humans, powerful, strange, and unpredictable, would play their part in a battle she did not yet understand. The chase was over for now, but the war had only just begun. And Dragon Girl knew that the next step would test her courage, her trust, and the fragile bond forming between humans and dragons in ways she could never imagine. The first rays of sunlight cut through the canyon, turning the jagged rocks golden and casting long shadows across the valley floor. Dragon Girl's chest heaved with exhaustion, her small body trembling from the night-long chase. Her mother, battered and bleeding, leaned heavily on her forelimbs, trying to regain strength while keeping watch over the silent humans hovering nearby. For a moment, it seemed they might finally be safe, but Dragon Girl knew better. Danger had a way of finding them, always, and humans were unpredictable, their intentions as mysterious as the weapons they wielded. Suddenly, a movement caught Dragon Girl's attention. One of the human pilots, the tall figure who had first intervened, broke from the group and moved toward the cliff's edge, his hand resting on the glowing device strapped to his wrist. Dragon Girl's instincts screamed at her. Something was wrong. "What are you doing?" she shouted, her voice cracking. The human turned, and for a moment, she thought she saw hesitation, almost regret, flicker across the visor. But then the hand pressed down on the device, and the cliff trembled slightly. Dragon Girl's eyes widened in fear. Was this another attack? Or something even worse? Before she could react, the enemy struck. A squad of armored figures emerged from the shadows, faster and more coordinated than before. One of them charged straight at the humans, weapons glowing with deadly energy. Dragon Girl's mother roared in warning, but her strength was waning. Dragon Girl's small hands clenched, ready to defend, though she knew she could do almost nothing against such foes. Then, shockingly, the tall human pilot turned toward the approaching enemy and stepped back, away from the fight. His device glowed faintly, not striking the attackers, but activating something that made Dragon Girl freeze. Was he betraying them? Panic surged through Dragon Girl. Her mother hissed low in warning, sensing the hesitation, the subtle shift in the human's behavior. Another human pilot, smaller and quicker, noticed her distress and moved closer, their weapon glowing with controlled energy. They fired precise beams, cutting off one flank of the enemy and forcing them into a narrow passage. Dragon Girl realized, with a shiver, that the humans were divided. One was seemingly betraying them, or perhaps testing them, while the others were protecting, guiding them through the battlefield. Suspense twisted her chest into knots. Could she trust these creatures? Could she trust any of them? The enemy lunged forward, taking advantage of the confusion. Dragon Girl's mother struggled to rise, letting out a deep, wounded roar. Dragon Girl clutched her mother's claw, whispering desperately, "We have to survive. We have to trust." Maybe? Her words trailed off as she watched the tall human's device activate fully, creating a glowing force that disrupted both the enemy and the protective barriers of the other humans. The enemy recoiled, but Dragon Girl's stomach twisted with fear. The human's strange action had nearly hit them as well. Was it a calculated move, or had they misjudged? Time slowed as Dragon Girl tried to comprehend the chaos. Sparks of energy crackled in the air, and the canyon seemed alive with movement. She watched as her mother tried to shift her weight, trying to protect Dragon Girl while dodging attacks. The smaller human pilots coordinated perfectly, cutting off enemy advances with sharp, precise strikes. Dragon Girl felt hope rise, quickly followed by fear. The tall human, silent, unyielding, unreadable, had taken a risk she could not understand. Suspense gripped her heart. Was he helping, or had he turned against them completely? Then, a sudden explosion rocked the cliffside. Dragon Girl stumbled, almost losing her balance. Her mother braced against the rocks, wings shaking as debris fell around them. The enemy had pressed hard, forcing the humans into defensive positions. Dragon Girl's mind raced. If the tall human had truly betrayed them, they would be trapped, and her mother would not survive another strike. Her claws dug into the ground as adrenaline surged. "Move, move, move," she shouted, pushing her mother forward. They stumbled along the rocky ledge, the smaller human pilots forming a protective line ahead, firing beams of energy that cut through approaching enemies. Dragon Girl's fear mingled with awe. The humans' coordination, their strategy, and the deadly precision of their weapons were unlike anything she had ever seen. Despite the possible betrayal, their actions were keeping them alive. She glanced at the tall human, who now seemed focused on something far in the distance, their movements deliberate and careful. Dragon Girl could not read the intention behind the visor, but a faint sense of strategy began to form in her mind. Perhaps this human was not betraying them. Perhaps there was a larger plan she could not yet see. The enemy regrouped again, striking from multiple directions. Dragon Girl's mother struggled to rise, letting out a roar that shook the rocks. Dragon Girl held her close, guiding her mother along the safer path the humans had created. Suddenly, one of the smaller humans darted forward, firing a rapid series of energy blasts that forced the enemy back. Dragon Girl's eyes widened in amazement. They were fighting with purpose, skill, and a strange sense of morality she could not yet comprehend. And yet, tension remained. The tall human's silent actions continued to sow doubt in her mind. Was this an act of control, betrayal, or something else entirely? Dragon Girl's wings twitched nervously as the canyon narrowed. The ledge became steeper, rocks loose beneath their feet. The enemy pressed harder, using every advantage to force them into a corner. Dragon Girl's heart pounded. Her mother's strength was fading, but she refused to give in. The humans continued to create barriers and strike with deadly precision, shaping the battlefield like a chessboard. Every step was a risk, every movement a calculation. The suspense was unbearable. Dragon Girl could feel it deep in her chest, a tight coil of fear and anticipation. Then, as if to answer her silent question, the tall human acted. With a sudden gesture, they redirected their energy device, not at the enemy, but at the ground beneath Dragon Girl and her mother. The canyon floor shifted slightly, creating a new path that allowed them to move more safely. Dragon Girl gasped. This human had not betrayed them, at least, not completely. Their actions were strange, calculated, almost alien, but they were working toward an outcome that kept Dragon Girl and her mother alive. Suspense twisted tighter in her chest. She still could not fully trust them, yet they had proven themselves. Her mother leaned weakly on her forelimbs, breathing heavily. "We are not safe yet," she whispered, her golden eyes scanning the enemy retreating slowly. "But alliances can be strange, little one. Do not judge too quickly." Dragon Girl nodded, understanding in a new, deeper way. Humans were different. unpredictable, but powerful. And in moments like these, unpredictability could be the difference between life and death. The canyon finally opened into a wider valley, giving them room to move more freely. The enemy had not abandoned the chase, but the humans' careful strategy had given them a temporary advantage. Dragon Girl allowed herself a brief moment of relief, brushing a trembling hand across her mother's scales. Yet, suspense lingered in the air like the faint hum of energy. The humans' strange methods, their quiet precision, and the possible betrayal of one among them created tension that Dragon Girl could not ignore. She knew the battle was far from over. Trust had to be earned, alliances tested, and the next move could change everything. As the sun climbed higher, casting light on the valley, Dragon Girl looked at the humans hovering nearby. Their devices glowed faintly, their movements precise, almost otherworldly. She could sense that they were calculating, measuring, deciding. Perhaps they were allies, perhaps they were something else entirely. Suspense wrapped around her like a living thing, urging her to stay alert, to be ready. One thing was certain: the alliance, fragile and strange as it was, would determine their survival. And Dragon Girl knew that the next test, trust, betrayal, or something far worse, was just around the corner. The morning sun climbed higher, scattering light across the rocky valley, yet Dragon Girl's world felt heavy with uncertainty. Her mother leaned against a jagged rock, breathing in short, shallow bursts. Every movement of her massive body showed the strain from the relentless attacks. Dragon Girl's small hands pressed against her mother's scales, feeling the heat and trembling beneath her touch. She wanted answers, to understand what had happened, why the humans had acted the way they did, and whether she could ever truly trust them. Suspense hung thick in the air, mingling with the faint hum of human energy devices. The humans hovered nearby, silent and deliberate. Their glowing devices pulsed faintly with each passing moment, their movements controlled and precise, almost unnaturally calm. Dragon Girl's golden eyes followed their every motion. She could feel the tension in the air, the invisible line between caution and fear. One human, the smaller, quicker pilot who had defended them so skillfully during the chase, glanced at her briefly. She saw what looked like understanding behind the reflective visor, a recognition that they were more than just survivors. They were students in a dangerous lesson. Yet, the tall human remained distant, their purpose unreadable, their calm demeanor both reassuring and unsettling. Dragon Girl turned to her mother, who was watching the humans carefully. "Do you think they will help us?" she whispered, her voice quivering. The dragon mother's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Help or use?" she murmured softly. "Humans are not simple. Their actions are guided by calculation, not emotion alone. Watch closely, little one. Understanding comes from observing, not judging too soon." Dragon Girl nodded, feeling both awe and fear. She had seen the human strength, their skill, and their strange methods of protection, but she had yet to understand their true intentions. Suddenly, the tall human pilot moved forward, gliding down to the valley floor with a strange grace that made Dragon Girl's heart skip. They knelt on one knee, placing a small glowing device on the ground. Dragon Girl's eyes widened. The device emitted a soft hum and projected a holographic map of the surrounding area. Lines of glowing energy traced paths, showing enemy positions, potential traps, and hidden routes. Dragon Girl's pulse quickened. The humans were not just fighting, they were planning, analyzing, predicting the enemy's every move. The suspense twisted tighter in her chest. There was a method to their strange actions, a reason behind their seemingly unpredictable behavior. The smaller human pilot approached Dragon Girl. Their voice filtered through the helmet speaker. "You and your mother are not safe here," they said simply. "Follow us. There is a place where you can rest and heal, but the enemy will continue hunting you. Time is short." Dragon Girl glanced at her mother. The dragon mother's eyes flickered with relief and caution. "Then we follow," she rumbled. "But slowly, carefully. Do not underestimate them." Dragon Girl nodded, her heart racing. They had survived so far, but every step forward brought new tension, new danger, and the lingering question: why were the humans helping them at all? As they moved, the humans began to explain, in their calm, measured way, fragments of information that Dragon Girl could barely comprehend. The enemy is not random, the smaller pilot said. They are hunting for a reason. They are part of a larger force, one that threatens not only you, but many others. We cannot allow them to succeed. Dragon Girl's eyes widened. The humans were not just acting on instinct. They were part of something larger, a network of strategies and alliances she had never imagined. Suspense twisted tight in her chest. What larger force? And why had they involved themselves in her mother's life? Then the tall human spoke, their voice quiet but carrying weight. There is a truth you must understand, they said. Dragon Girl froze. Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and anticipation. Humans do not act blindly. Every intervention has purpose. Your survival, your mother's survival, is part of a plan beyond this battle. We protect, but we also observe. Decisions are made based on potential, on intelligence, on outcomes you cannot yet see. Dragon Girl's mind reeled. The human's strange, detached behavior was not cruelty or betrayal, it was calculation. Suspense and awe mingled in her chest. Her mother's eyes narrowed as she listened, understanding dawning. They have watched us, studied us, perhaps judged our strength and will, she murmured. Dragon Girl shivered. Studied? Judged? The human's every move had seemed alien, almost harsh yet purposeful. They had saved her mother, guided them through the chase, and yet remained distant, unreadable, and impossibly powerful. She realized now that the humans were not just allies. They were something more, something larger than herself or even her mother could comprehend. As they approached a hidden valley, shielded by cliffs and natural barriers, the humans created a protective perimeter. Dragon Girl noticed how the energy devices formed a dome of light, invisible from the outside but unbreakable from within. Her mother lowered herself to rest, grateful but cautious. Dragon Girl followed, still trying to process everything. Why us? She asked softly. The smaller human pilot crouched beside her. Because you are strong. Because your mother is important. Because we fight for more than survival, we fight for balance. But this truth is dangerous. Not all who hear it will survive understanding it. Dragon Girl swallowed hard, feeling suspense coil tighter in her chest. She realized that the human's hidden truth was more than strategy. It was a test, a lesson, a warning. Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears. A whisper carried on the wind. Dragon Girl froze. Her mother lifted her head, ears twitching, sensing the subtle shift in the valley's atmosphere. They are close, the Dragon Mother murmured. Dragon Girl's pulse quickened. Even in the protective dome created by the humans, danger lurked. Her heart pounded as she looked at the humans, searching for reassurance. The tall human remained silent, their movements precise, almost regal, as they scanned the horizon. The smaller pilot's eyes flicked toward her, a hint of caution visible. Suspense gripped her like ice, tightening around every thought. The humans finally revealed the secret carefully, in fragments that Dragon Girl could barely believe. We are not just pilots. We are part of a force that protects life across the stars, the tall human said. Your species, your dragons, your bond, it matters to the balance of everything. Your mother is more than a dragon. She carries knowledge, strength, and history that some would destroy to control. Dragon Girl's mouth fell open. Knowledge? History? The suspense became almost unbearable. Her mother had always told her stories of ancient times, of battles long forgotten, but she had never imagined that humans cared, or that her mother's existence held such importance. Dragon Girl felt a mixture of awe, fear, and hope. The human's strange, calculated methods were no longer just mysterious. They were purposeful. She realized that survival was not enough. Understanding the human's hidden truth was the next step. Suspense lingered, sharp and thrilling, as she realized that this revelation was only the beginning. The humans had protected them, guided them, and now revealed that their existence had larger consequences than she could ever imagine. Her mother's voice rumbled softly. Little one, remember this. Trust is complicated. Allies may seem strange, their motives unclear, but their actions can save lives. Learn from them. Watch. Understand. Dragon Girl nodded, her mind racing with questions, her heart still pounding from fear and excitement. She looked at the humans, realizing for the first time that these creatures, so different from dragons, were capable of thinking, planning, and acting on a scale far beyond her imagination. The valley was quiet again, but suspense hung thickly in the air. Dragon Girl knew that the enemies would return, that new challenges awaited, and that the humans' hidden truth was only a beginning. Every movement, every decision from this point forward would matter. And as she held her mother close, feeling the tremble of exhaustion under her hands, Dragon Girl understood one undeniable fact. The next battle would test not only their strength but their trust, their courage, and the fragile alliance between dragons and humans that had already begun. The hidden valley was quiet, but Dragon Girl's heart thumped like a drum of warning. Her mother rested heavily, wings drooping, yet the heat of battle still lingered in her body. The humans stood ready, hovering in formation above the cliff edges, their devices glowing faintly with a soft, steady hum. Dragon Girl could sense tension in the air, a mixture of anticipation and danger. Every moment stretched painfully as she tried to prepare herself. She knew the enemy would return, stronger and more determined than before. Every instinct screamed that the final battle was approaching, and that they had no room for mistakes. The first shadow appeared on the horizon, a dark, creeping form moving faster than the eye could follow. Dragon Girl's golden eyes widened. The enemy had regrouped, their numbers larger than before, their weapons pulsing with deadly energy. Her mother lifted her head, letting out a deep, resonant roar that echoed across the valley. Dragon Girl felt the tremor beneath her small hands as she clutched her mother's scales, her wings trembling with fear and anticipation. The humans' glowing devices flared to life, casting lines of energy across the ground, forming barriers and marking safe zones. They had prepared, but Dragon Girl sensed that even their precision would be tested in this battle. Then it began. The enemy charged forward with lethal speed, their coordination perfect, almost mechanical. Dragon Girl's mother struggled to rise, claws digging into the rocky ground, wings flaring despite the pain. Dragon Girl followed, her heart pounding, guiding her mother toward the humans' protective energy lines. Sparks flew as weapons clashed, energy beams slicing through rocks and air, and the ground trembled beneath the fury of battle. Every movement was dangerous, every step a gamble. Dragon Girl realized that this was more than a fight for survival. It was a test of strategy, courage, and trust. The humans moved with astonishing precision, their energy devices creating barriers, cutting off enemy advances, and redirecting attacks. Dragon Girl watched in awe as beams of concentrated energy struck the enemy with deadly accuracy, forcing them into narrow paths where her mother could defend more effectively. She could feel the humans' intelligence in every action, a methodical brilliance that made them almost impossible to predict. Yet, suspense twisted her chest tightly. Could the humans hold out against such numbers? Could her mother survive the relentless assault? A sudden explosion rocked the valley. One enemy had broken through a barrier, striking dangerously close to Dragon Girl and her mother. Her heart leapt into her throat as she lunged to shield her mother, but the smaller human pilot acted faster. A pulse of energy struck the attacker, sending them flying backward, disarmed and stunned. Dragon Girl gasped, realizing the human skill was unmatched, not just in strength, but in control, timing, and strategy. Her mother let out a relieved growl, her golden eyes meeting Dragon Girl's. "They fight differently than we do," she rumbled. "Watch carefully, learn, and survive." The enemy regrouped, using the terrain to their advantage, striking from multiple directions. Dragon Girl's wings twitched nervously as she guided her mother, keeping close to the humans' energy barriers. The tall human pilot moved with eerie calm, their devices humming as they created zones of safety and launched precise counterattacks. Dragon Girl could feel the suspense building with every passing second. One false step, one misjudged move, and they could all fall. Her chest tightened as she realized the stakes were higher than anything she had ever known. Suddenly, a massive figure emerged from the shadows, the enemy leader, larger, faster, and more menacing than the others. Dragon Girl's mother hissed low, spreading her wings to protect her daughter. Dragon Girl's claws dug into the ground as she stood ready, though fear and awe surged through her small body. The humans responded immediately. Beams of energy shot from their devices, forming barriers and forcing the leader into a narrow canyon path where Dragon Girl's mother could strike. Sparks flew as claws and energy collided, and the ground trembled beneath the force of their battle. Dragon Girl watched every move, her mind racing. The humans were precise, almost frighteningly so, calculating every attack and defense. Their devices created traps, barriers, and zones of safety, guiding her mother's strikes and controlling the battlefield. Suspense gripped her heart as the enemy leader roared, striking again and again, testing every line of defense. Dragon Girl realized that the humans' actions were not just protection. They were orchestration, a careful dance of power and strategy that left no room for error. Her mother lunged, claws flashing, striking the enemy leader with incredible force. The ground shook, and Dragon Girl felt the impact reverberate through her body. The leader stumbled but recovered, more furious than before. The humans moved in perfect synchrony, beams of energy cutting off escape routes, guiding the enemy into areas where her mother could land the most effective blows. Dragon Girl could hardly breathe, caught between awe, fear, and hope. The suspense was unbearable. Every moment held the potential for disaster. Then came the turning point. The tall human pilot activated a massive energy surge, a concentrated pulse that enveloped the enemy leader. The force pressed the leader to the ground, immobilized, while smaller humans fired beams that struck weak points in the armor. Dragon Girl's eyes widened. The humans had not just fought. They had calculated, trapped, and executed a flawless strategy. Her mother roared triumphantly, striking the immobilized enemy with her full strength, while Dragon Girl clutched her mother's claws, relief and excitement mingling in her chest. The remaining enemies faltered, disorganized and confused by the humans' precision. Dragon Girl watched as her mother, recovering strength with every strike, took command of the battlefield alongside the humans. The energy beams, barriers, and precise attacks worked together in harmony, guiding the dragon's natural power and overwhelming the enemy. Sparks flew, rocks shattered, and the air hummed with the power of the battle. Suspense twisted tightly around Dragon Girl's chest, but slowly, a sense of victory began to grow. Finally, the last enemy fell, retreating into the shadows, defeated and disoriented. The valley was quiet again, save for the crackle of energy from the humans' devices. Dragon Girl collapsed to her knees, her small body trembling with exhaustion and relief. Her mother leaned against her, wings heavy but proud, breathing deeply as she surveyed the battlefield. The humans hovered silently, their devices dimming, their movements controlled and calm. Dragon Girl realized with awe that the humans had not only protected them, they had won the battle, orchestrated the victory, and ensured their survival. Suspense lingered in the valley like a faint hum. Dragon Girl's mind raced with questions about the humans, their motives, and their strange, precise methods. She glanced at her mother, whose golden eyes met hers with pride and understanding. "Remember this, little one," her mother rumbled. "Strength is important, but allies with purpose can turn the tide of battle. Observe, learn, respect, trust, carefully, and always be ready." Dragon Girl nodded, her heart still racing, her mind filled with awe and excitement. As the humans lowered their energy devices, Dragon Girl felt a strange connection forming, an understanding that went beyond words. They were different, unpredictable, and powerful beyond imagination. They had saved her mother, guided them through peril, and revealed secrets she could only begin to comprehend. Suspense still lingered, for she knew the universe held greater challenges ahead. But for now, victory was theirs. And Dragon Girl understood that this alliance, fragile and mysterious as it was, had changed everything. The valley grew quiet, the sun rising high, casting light on the victorious dragons and humans. Dragon Girl stretched her wings, feeling renewed strength and determination. Her mother nudged her gently, a proud and protective presence. The humans hovered nearby, calm and deliberate, their glowing devices now resting. Dragon Girl realized that the final showdown had not just been a battle. It had been a lesson in strategy, courage, and trust. She looked at the humans, awe and respect in her eyes, knowing that together, dragons and humans could face challenges far greater than either could alone.